The first encounter. Humanity had always dreamed of the stars. They reached for them with a combination of hope and daring, sending ships to the farthest corners of the galaxy in search of new worlds, new civilizations, and a deeper understanding of the cosmos. The Crescent Horizon was one of the latest in a series of humanity's attempts to make its mark in the vast unknown. She was not the most advanced ship in the fleet, nor the largest, but she was the ship chosen for a mission that could change the course of human history. Captain Maya Hollis leaned against the cold metal railing of the observation deck, gazing at the swirling, star-strewn vista outside. The sight was breathtaking, a sea of black dotted with pinpricks of light. It was both humbling and inspiring to be so far from home. Maya had always loved the stars, ever since she was a child. Now, as a captain, the responsibility of guiding humanity into this new frontier lay on her shoulders. "Captain," Lieutenant Kieran Lang's voice cut through her reverie, his footsteps echoing behind her. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with the presence of a natural leader, a sharp contrast to Maya's more reserved demeanor. "We're approaching the XR-Wrath system. All systems are online, and we're on course." "Good," Maya replied, turning her gaze back to the starfield. The XR-Wrath were a mystery, a race so ancient and terrifying that they were a dark legend whispered in the corridors of human space stations. The few encounters humanity had with the XR-Wrath had ended in destruction, and the few records they had of the species were fragmented, like pieces of a shattered mirror. No one really knew how far their reach stretched. Some said they were a galactic empire. Others claimed they were a race of mercenaries. But one thing was clear, that XR-Wrath were not to be trifled with. Maya's eyes narrowed as she reflected on the mission ahead. The Crescent Horizon was tasked with establishing a diplomatic contact with the XR-Wrath. The plan was simple: offer trade, seek cooperation, and try to avoid conflict. Maya wasn't naive enough to think that it would be easy. The XR-Wrath had conquered countless species, using brutal force and cunning tactics. It was said that their technology was decades, if not centuries, ahead of humanity's. But there was one thing humanity had that the XR-Wrath didn't: ingenuity. If there was a chance to make peace, they would find it. Kieran interrupted her thoughts again, this time with a more serious tone. "Captain, we've got incoming signals. 2 XR-Wrath ships are making their way toward us. It seems they detected our arrival." Maya's stomach tightened. There was no way to know what they wanted, but it was clear that this wasn't going to be a simple diplomatic meeting. "What's their position?" she asked, her voice calm but alert. "On an intercept course, approximately 30 minutes out. They're fast, faster than we anticipated." Maya exhaled slowly. There was no turning back now. She had trained for this moment, but facing the XR-Wrath wasn't the same as running simulations in the safety of the Academy. They were real, and they were here. "We need to stay ahead of them," Maya said, turning to Kieran. "Prepare the crew. Let's make sure the Crescent Horizon can handle a fight if it comes to that." The crew had been briefed about the XR-Wrath, but no one could be truly prepared for a race as merciless and enigmatic as the XR-Wrath. As far as anyone knew, that XR-Wrath had never been defeated, only delayed. Now, humanity was entering their domain. The crew's resolve. On board the Crescent Horizon, Maya had a team she trusted. They were all specialists in their own fields, but it was their unique ability to think on their feet that made them stand out. First Officer Lila O'Connor, a former intelligence officer, was standing by the console, her fingers dancing over the controls as she tried to make sense of the incoming signals. "These ships, they're not behaving like normal military craft," Lila muttered under her breath, her brow furrowing as she analyzed the data. "They're moving with precision, but there's something off about their readings. It's almost like they're expecting us." "Maybe they're just tracking us," Kieran suggested, though his tone lacked the usual confidence. "No," Lila said, shaking her head. "They know we're here, and they're waiting for us to make the first move." Maya paced back and forth, trying to think of a strategy. They couldn't outrun the Xar'rath ships, not in open space. But maybe there was another way. "Prepare the negotiation protocols," she ordered. "We'll show them we come in peace, but I want every crew member ready for action, just in case." Arrival at Xar'rath space. It wasn't long before the Crescent Horizon was pulled into the gravity well of the Xar'rath homeworld, a planet that orbited a dying star. The planet below was unlike any the crew had seen before, vast and barren, with jagged mountain ranges that stretched toward the sky like the bones of a dead giant. The landscape was desolate, devoid of the life and greenery that marked so many of the worlds humanity had encountered. It was as if the Xar'rath had conquered not only civilizations, but the very soul of the planet itself. "This place, it feels wrong," Lila said, her voice almost a whisper as the ship descended. Maya agreed, but she wouldn't let her emotions show. "We have a mission. Stick to the plan. Lang, I want you ready in case things go south." Karen gave a sharp nod, and Maya saw the fire in his eyes. He was ready for a fight, no matter how outgunned they might be. As the ship broke through the clouds and made its final approach to the surface, the crew could see the sprawling city of Xar'rath in the distance. The architecture was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Towering spires and monolithic structures, their surfaces slick and dark, pulsing with an eerie light. "Welcome, humans," a voice boomed from the comm system, sending a chill down the crew's spines. The voice was distorted but unmistakably powerful. "You have entered Xar'rath space. You will obey our laws, or you will die." Maya's heart raced, but she knew what had to be done. They had come to negotiate peace, but the Xar'rath would only respect strength. This was a test, not just of humanity's will, but of their ability to adapt and survive. "We come in peace," Maya said, her voice calm yet commanding. "But we are not afraid to defend ourselves." There was a pause, and then a low, resonant laugh echoed over the comms. "We shall see, human. We shall see." A diplomatic gamble. The Crescent Horizon touched down in a barren field, the landscape eerily quiet except for the distant hum of the Xar'rath city. The crew stood at attention, fully aware of the precariousness of the situation. In front of them stood a figure, tall, insectoid, its many limbs twitching with an unsettling rhythm. The Xar'rath ambassador, if such a being could be called that, was waiting for them. Maya stepped forward, her stance strong and unwavering. She had seen this moment in countless simulations, but nothing could prepare her for the reality of standing before the Xar'rath. "State your purpose, human," the ambassador said, its voice laced with an unsettling blend of curiosity and contempt. "Speak quickly, or I will decide for you." "We are here to negotiate a peaceful relationship between our species," Maya replied, her voice steady. "Humanity is not here to conquer. We seek cooperation and trade. We believe there is much we can learn from each other." The Xar'rath ambassador tilted its head, its multifaceted eyes gleaming. "You misunderstand, human. Cooperation is not what we offer. You will either kneel or you will perish." Maya felt a shiver run down her spine, but her resolve did not falter. This was the moment. Humanity had always faced adversity with resilience and ingenuity. They would not kneel. Human ingenuity. The Crescent Horizon sat in the shadow of the towering spires of the Xar'rath city, its hull still warm from the descent. The crew stood in a solemn line before the ship, their weapons holstered but their senses sharpened, watching every movement in the eerie silence. The moment had come, the first true encounter between humanity and the Xar'rath, and there was no turning back. They had promised peace, but the Xar'rath had made it clear that cooperation was not in their vocabulary. Maya Hollis stood at the forefront, her hands clasped behind her back, a cool breeze ruffling her short dark hair. She looked over at Kieran Lang, who stood just behind her, his jaw clenched with restrained tension. Lila O'Connor, the first officer, was scanning the horizon with her usual sharpness, her eyes never stopping as they searched for signs of movement. Ensign Area Wells, young but quick-minded, was standing at attention, her hand nearly grazing the hilt of her sidearm, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. The XRF ambassador, standing at the entrance to the city, had waited for them to approach. Its body shimmered with an unsettling glow, like the chitinous shell of a beetle, its many eyes fixed on them with unnerving precision. It tilted its head as Maya approached, its mandibles clicking in an almost amused fashion. "You come seeking peace." The XR-Wrath's voice was deep and resonant, each word a weight that hung in the air. "Yet you bring nothing of value. Your technology is crude, your species insignificant. What could you possibly offer us that we cannot take?" Maya stepped forward, holding the XR-Wrath ambassador's gaze with unwavering determination. "We may be small in comparison to your empire, but we possess something you don't," she said calmly. "We have ingenuity. And with that, we can achieve things together that neither of us could accomplish alone." The ambassador let out a low, rumbling laugh. "Ingenuity? Do you think your primitive minds can outwit us?" It took a step closer, its towering form casting a long shadow over her. "You are in our domain now, human. Do not mistake our patience for weakness." Maya didn't flinch. She had faced worse threats, wars, sabotage, and even betrayal. But she knew the stakes were higher than ever. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We aren't here to challenge your authority," she said, her voice firm and clear. "We only seek a chance to show you that humanity can be an ally, not an enemy." There was a long pause as the XR-Wrath ambassador studied her. Finally, it spoke again, its voice cold as ice. "You are bold, human. But boldness alone will not save you." It turned slightly, signaling for the rest of the crew to follow. "Come, you will meet our leaders, the city of stone and steel." The journey into the XR-Wrath city was a tense one. The path was lined with sleek black spires that jutted out of the cracked earth like jagged teeth, their surfaces glimmering in the dull light of the dying sun. The air was thick with a strange, acrid smell, a mix of burnt metal and decay that made the crew's stomachs churn. The streets were eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of energy flowing through unseen conduits and the occasional clattering of insectoid footsteps. As they entered the heart of the city, Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of the alien world pressing in on her. It was a place that seemed to have been built with one purpose in mind: domination. The architecture was vast and imposing, designed to intimidate rather than inspire awe. The ground beneath their feet was made of dark stone, cold and unforgiving, and the air carried an oppressive heaviness that made it difficult to breathe. It was a far cry from the bustling cities of Earth, full of life and warmth. Here, it was as if the life had been drained out of everything, leaving only cold, silent structures that stood like tombstones. The crew walked in silence, the sound of their boots echoing off the stone walls as they were led toward a massive hall at the center of the city. At the entrance, two colossal XR-Wrath guards stood, their insectoid forms bristling with weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They opened the doors without a word, and the crew was ushered inside. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was no less foreboding. The walls were lined with what seemed like ancient runes, carved into the stone, and glowing faintly with an eerie light. The floor was a smooth black surface that reflected the cold, lifeless light coming from above. At the far end of the hall, seated on an enormous throne made of dark, polished metal, was a figure that seemed to embody the very essence of the XR-Wrath. Tall, menacing, and exuding an aura of absolute power. The figure stood as the crew entered, its body covered in intricate armor that reflected the dim light of the hall. It was a XR-Wrath lord, and its presence was overwhelming. "You are bold to come here, human." The Lord's voice was like the grinding of stone, deep and harsh. "But you are foolish to think that your ingenuity can change anything. The XR-Wrath do not need your help." Maya stepped forward, her heart racing, but her mind focused. She knew this was the moment where humanity would either rise or fall. "We are not here to beg for help," she said, her voice steady, her tone unyielding. "We are here to offer something you do not have. A partnership." The XR Lord tilted its head, clearly intrigued. "A partnership," it repeated, its mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. "Explain." "We have technology that could help your empire," Maya began. "Not just in warfare, but in the creation of sustainable resources, long-term energy production. And energy," the Lord interrupted with a sneer. "What good is your energy to us? We have conquered entire worlds. We are self-sufficient." Maya didn't falter. "But you don't have everything. Your empire relies on conquest, but conquest alone will only lead to stagnation. You will eventually run out of worlds to conquer, and your empire will crumble from the inside. Humanity has learned how to adapt. We can teach you to innovate, to evolve beyond your current limits." There was a long silence. The Lord stared at her, unmoving, while the rest of the crew stood in tense silence. The atmosphere seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the Lord spoke. "You speak of adaptation, but what makes you think that we need you to teach us? We have conquered worlds for millennia. We are perfection incarnate." Maya smiled, despite the odds. "Because," she said, her voice full of quiet confidence, "even perfection can evolve." The test. The XR Lord's eyes narrowed as it stared at Maya. "We will see if your words hold any value," it said, its voice cold and calculating. "There is a test we will put you through, human. If you succeed, you may yet prove your worth. But if you fail, there will be no more talks, only the end." The crew exchanged wary glances. Kieran Lang stepped forward, his voice rough with suspicion. "What kind of test?" The Lord's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "You will face a challenge, one of our choosing. It will test your adaptability, your resourcefulness, and your ability to survive in our domain. If you succeed, you may continue your little mission. If not, well, it will be your last." Maya looked around at her crew, seeing the fear in their eyes, but she didn't let it show. "We accept your challenge." With that, the room fell silent once more, and the crew knew they were about to face something unlike anything they had encountered before. This was no longer about diplomacy or negotiation. It was about survival. The trial of the strongest. The XR Lord's challenge echoed in the crew's minds as they were escorted deeper into the heart of the city. The thick stone walls seemed to close in around them as they moved through narrow, twisting corridors. The ambient light in the corridors was faint, casting long shadows that made it feel like they were walking through an ancient tomb rather than a living, breathing city. The quiet hum of alien machinery thrummed in the background, a constant reminder of the vast power of the XR. Maya felt the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. The Lord had promised that if they failed this trial, there would be no more negotiations, no more talks. It would be the end of their mission, and likely the end of their lives. She glanced at her crew, their faces a mixture of resolve and uncertainty. Kieran Lang, the ever-confident pilot, was quieter than usual, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes scanning every corner as they moved. Lila O'Connor, the sharp-minded first officer, was calm, but Maya could see the faint lines of worry in her expression. Aria Wells, the young ensign, was trying to mask her nerves, but Maya could see her hand gripping the weapon at her side, just a little too tightly. The alien guards that flanked them were silent, their insectoid forms towering and imposing. They led them down a final passageway and through an enormous set of double doors. The door opened with a resounding groan, revealing an arena unlike any they had ever seen. It was vast, surrounded by towering walls of black stone and decorated with strange, glowing symbols that pulsed with a cold light. At the center of the arena was a large open pit, the bottom of which was obscured by a thick, swirling mist. The atmosphere was thick with tension, as if the very air itself was charged with a deadly energy. A chilling laugh echoed through the arena, and the crew turned to see the Xarrath Lord watching from a high balcony, its multiple eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Welcome to the trial of the strongest humans," the Lord's voice boomed, reverberating through the stone walls. "Here, you will face a test of your strength, wit, and resourcefulness. You will be pitted against our champions in a contest that will show whether you are worthy of our time." Maya swallowed hard. The trial was not just a test of their physical strength. It was a test of everything that made them human. She looked back at her crew, their faces grim but determined. This wasn't just about surviving. It was about proving that humanity had something to offer the Xarrath, something they could not conquer through force alone. The Lord's voice continued, its tone as cold as the stone beneath their feet. "You will have no weapons, no tools. Only your minds and your courage will guide you. Fail, and you will be reduced to nothing more than a memory in the dust of this arena." The doors to the pit opened, and the crew was ushered forward, their hearts pounding in their chests. They were about to face something far more terrifying than they had anticipated. This wasn't just a challenge. It was a fight for their lives. The first trial, strength of will. As the crew entered the arena, the first challenge became clear. Across from them stood a massive figure, its silhouette outlined against the dark mist of the pit. It was a Xarrath champion, towering over them with insectoid limbs rippling with muscle. Its many eyes gleamed with malice as it flexed its arms, revealing claws that could easily rend metal in two. "Your first test, humans," the Lord's voice rang out, "is the strength of will. This creature is a champion of the Xarrath, one of the fiercest warriors in our empire. You will face it in combat. Defeat it, and you will have earned your right to continue." Maya's heart raced. The creature across from them was a beast, a literal force of nature. It was larger than any of the crew, and its strength was legendary. There was no chance they could overpower it with brute force, and Maya knew that any attempt to fight it head-on would be suicidal. The trial had already begun, but the path to survival wasn't clear. "I've got an idea," Kieran muttered, breaking the silence. He didn't look scared, but Maya could see the wheels turning in his mind. "We don't need to beat it in a straight fight. We need to outsmart it." Maya nodded, signaling for the crew to gather. "We need to use the environment to our advantage," she said in a low voice. "It's bigger, it's stronger, but it's probably not as agile as we are. If we can lure it into a trap, we can take it down." Lila stepped forward, her face set in a determined expression. "I'll distract it. You two, get to high ground. I'll give you a signal." Arya hesitated, clearly nervous, but Maya could see the resolve hardening in her eyes. She knew what they had to do. "Let's do it," she said. The challenge was set into motion. Lila took off running toward the far side of the arena, using her agility to draw the Xarrath champion's attention. The beast's insectoid eyes followed her every movement, its claws clicking against the stone as it bounded toward her. "Now," Kieran shouted. Maya and Arya scrambled toward the high ground. The arena was full of jagged rocks and uneven surfaces, perfect for creating an ambush. Kieran was quick to scale the nearest rock, positioning himself in a place where he could have a clear shot at the creature. Arya followed closely behind, her eyes wide but focused. They were working together, and it was their only chance. Lila led the beast around in a wide circle, staying just out of reach of its massive claws. Every now and then, she would duck and weave, using her quickness to stay just out of its grasp. She knew that this was only a distraction. She was buying time, and every second counted. Maya stood still, her eyes locked on the beast as it circled toward them. The plan had to work. There was no other option. As the Xarrath champion charged toward Kieran, Lila ducked behind a pile of rocks, and the creature followed her lead. Maya's pulse quickened as she saw the track closing. With one final, calculated movement, Kieran dropped a large piece of rock directly onto the creature's head, knocking it off balance. Arya was already at the ready with a series of quick strikes, forcing the creature to stagger backward. "Now, Maya!" Kieran shouted. Maya rushed forward, using the opening they had created. She grabbed a nearby fragment of metal, sharp and jagged, and hurled it with all her strength toward the creature's exposed side. It hit, drawing a sharp hiss of pain from the creature. For the first time, the XR Wrath champion faltered, its movements slowing. Lila was back in motion now, darting around the creature's legs, distracting it long enough for Kieran to take another shot. Finally, with one last coordinated strike, the creature stumbled, falling to the ground with a heavy thud. The arena was silent. The XR Wrath Lord's voice rang out from the balcony above. Impressive. But that was only the first test. The second trial. The trial of intellect. The team stood together, breathing heavily but united. They had survived the first trial. It was a victory, but Maya knew that the next challenge would be even harder. The Lord's voice came again, this time with a chilling edge to it. The second trial is the trial of intellect. You will now face a challenge unlike anything you've experienced before. Only those with true ingenuity will survive. The doors to the arena opened again, and this time, no creature stood in front of them. Instead, a series of complex, holographic puzzles appeared before them. An intricate web of lights and shifting shapes, some of which seemed to defy the laws of physics. Maya's heart skipped a beat. This was no longer about brute force or agility. It was a test of their minds, their ability to think under pressure and adapt. Kieran looked at her, determination in his eyes. Let's show them what humans can do.